correctional specialist who thankfully was able to help us get you guys in. And then we have Mr. Phelps's class joining us, English class, and Miss Eakin's class, that's math. And then Mr. Stanley is another assistant principal here. So thank you guys so much. And thank you all for joining us today as we are really celebrating the power of us in the year 20 of Lansdowne. So I'm going to unplug my phone and let the chief go ahead and take over.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Paul Neudigate, Chief of the Virginia Beach Police Department. With me is my executive aide, Lieutenant Brad Wessler. So everybody can hear us? Good. So really just want to thank you for the opportunity. I've really become educated on what a prestigious academic institution Lansdowne High is. So this is truly an opportunity to speak to such a distinguished group. Policing, there is no nobler profession. So for those that are interested in a few years, this is a great place to be. And I really relish the opportunity to talk about your Virginia Beach Police Department. So I really hope there'll be some good questions. I know Ms. Gish had asked me to talk a few things about myself. I'm not going to try to bore you and belabor that, but I'll cover a few topics. So I'm new to the seat after 30 years in Cincinnati, where I retired as an assistant chief. I've been the chief now here since October 14, a little over 6 months. And I have found it is a great organization. We have great people, great men and women with a true servant's heart that loves the community of Virginia Beach. Why did I decide on a career in law enforcement? It really picked me. I never had an inkling to do anything else. I think the two things that really attract me to law enforcement and have for the past 32 years are, the structure and the camaraderie. So when I went into boot camp at 18, it was a natural transition to evolve into policing at 21. And I've given myself to this profession for the last 32 years. I think what most probably realize, but it is not a 9-to-5 job. If you commit to the path of policing, you are going to miss a lot of holidays. You're going to miss a lot of weekends with families. The phone is going to ring at all hours of the night and weekends. So it is truly a passion and a calling and not just a profession. It really was never a decision for me. It had me from the get-go. And what I can say is there have been ups and downs, and we know that policing is under a lot of scrutiny this past year or so, but there's never been one day that I have not been proud to be a police officer and wear the badge of either Cincinnati, where I came from, or now the Virginia Beach Police Department. I truly would never do anything else. One of the other questions that we had is, challenges, a ton of challenges, both external and internal. Promotions. Promotions are extremely hard to come by. So if you see an officer out on the street and they've got sergeant stripes, they work very, very hard for those. If you see like the good lieutenants wearing the lieutenant bars, you're wearing the captain bars, that is a very challenging process. And if you want to get into senior leadership, such as a deputy chief or an assistant chief, extremely competitive. My captain's process back in the day, I started a year out preparing for that process. So education is highly valued in the law enforcement profession now. I think all of my command staff, captains, deputy chiefs, and myself all have master's degrees. Probably over the last decade, policing has truly evolved from a job into that profession, and we value the education. I had never really planned on pursuing my higher education. I did not seek my bachelor's degree until 2010, long after I graduated from high school in 1986. And it really came down to opportunities. I made captain, and to be an assistant chief, you had to have a bachelor's degree. So in 2010, I went back to school. You can imagine what a challenge that was. after graduating in '86, learning to write papers and everything else again. But stayed the course, obtained my master's, and really set the course for me finding a new home in Virginia Beach. The external challenges, they're many. The community demands a lot, they expect a lot, and rightfully so, of their police department. Um, you know, I think one thing that we need to remember is every time someone in this organization or in policing gets promoted, you're no longer just responsible for your own conduct and how we perform out on the street. As a sergeant, you're responsible for the officers. Lieutenants are responsible for the sergeants and the officers, and up you go. So 800 sworn officers in this organization, and I'm truly responsible for the conduct of each and every one of them. So even when I'm home sleeping at night, the actions that one of our officers may engage in reflects upon me, reflects upon this organization. And I have an obligation, I may be sleeping and not on the scene, but that I provide them with the quality training, the quality supervision, the right equipment to make good decisions and deal with our community in a fair, compassionate, empathetic manner while we're doing what we've sworn to do. I would say that the challenges are not getting any easier, but what I've found in my 6 months here is that the VBPD is a mirror of a lot of other organizations. You have 98% of the officers doing the right things for the right reasons, and they truly do love this community. Motivators, always family, but I would say, it's kind of different. I've had mentors, and we do encourage our folks to be mentors and identify people that want to rise through the ranks. I would say that mine was a little different. There were individuals, and it's probably in your profession as well, and probably in your classroom, that, there's people that encourage you to do better, but we also see individuals that are in positions of leadership, and they're maybe not always doing things for the right reasons. And it inspires you to excel into those positions. So I think, unfortunately, I probably had more individuals that inspired me because I don't feel that they were doing an adequate job at their rank and that they were always doing things for the right reasons. And I always felt that, if ever given the opportunity, I would be in a better position to serve the community at this higher leadership position than maybe what some individuals were doing. And this does go back. I've been policing for 32 years. The profession has changed greatly. We are no longer the policing profession that we were 32 years ago. 32 years ago, we believed in a zero tolerance model. We truly believed that going out and making a lot of arrests, whether they really accomplished anything or not, was a good sign of being a police officer. If officers came in and they had a monthly statistical sheet, and they went out and they wrote 10 parkers and 10 moving citations and 10 felony arrests and 10 misdemeanor arrests, they would get a gold star for the month. But it really didn't tell us what they were doing to solve the problems in the community. And we've gotten so far away from a metric-based performance standard. So if there's a perception out there that police are still, that we're requiring to write so many tickets and so many arrests, doesn't exist in policing for the most part, especially not in your large progressive municipal organizations that were really based on outcomes and how we get there and not just general quantifiable data. So, what I can say though is, as a leader, your actions carry much more weight than your words, especially in the law enforcement profession. People are always watching to see how you react, and do your actions match your words, your directive, and your vision. And so when you have people in a position of leadership and they don't live up to these expectations, I think it drives some of us to do better. Community, always a huge motivator. Many days we are helping people at their worst. It's unfortunate that most people don't call 911 and they don't ask for our assistance because they're having a good day. Usually it's one of the worst days of their lives, whether it's a crash, they're a victim of crime, or some other occurrence. But I think that's where we really strive, is to help and be that conduit to help our community on some of their worst days. Thoughts on building a positive, supportive team. Have to be engaged at all levels, especially internally. As the chief, I can put out a lot of directives and espouse vision, but it really means nothing if I can't get the buy-in from the ground level. So we have to identify those informal leaders at the rank of police officer, the ones out there doing the work every day, the sergeants, that first line level of supervision. It's absolutely critical, because if I don't have the buy-in of the officers and I don't have the buy-in of the sergeants, it's all going to be noise in between the top floor and the line level troops. So it's imperative that I engage them, I get them to buy in to where we're going, and then I push it from the top down and they drive it from the top up, and then we get everybody in between. And that really seems to be the best way to get that buy-in from the entire organization. Can't micromanage. I've learned that in 32 years. You have to give clear expectations of what we're trying to achieve, and then you leave them up to their own ingenuity to figure out how to get us there. Trust your folks, give them a task, and then get out of their way. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I found this, that lack of knowledge is not ignorance. Many times folks assume because I'm the chief, I've got answers to everything. It's not true. There's a lot of things that I don't know. And, I have to humble myself at times to ask those questions. But surround yourself with people smarter than you. It's been one of my strengths, is identifying people that have strengths and weaknesses, surround myself with people that know how to do it better than I. One of the things that I found as a leader is the ability to interact with folks, that emotional intelligence. That's really what it's about. And working collectively with your team. When you graduate into the workforce and you elevate to those leadership roles, a good leader is one that can identify those strengths and capitalize on them. And, it's true. People don't leave jobs, they leave poor leaders. And so it's incumbent upon us to be good leaders internally, so that we're providing good service to the community. And I think why Virginia Beach? It was both a lack of opportunity and opportunity. So, when you get to the top, there's only one police chief. I was the number 2 in Cincinnati for the past 5 years. And the opportunity to evolve into a chief position just didn't exist. So I had started looking, and what I found in Virginia Beach, it reminds me a lot of Cincinnati. It is like a small big city or a big small city. Even though we're 450,000 residents, it seems like everybody knows everyone. There's true community feeling. So I'm really feeling at home, except Virginia Beach. We got better weather, we've got an ocean, and things that I left in the Midwest. So I think the wife and I have found that we have made the right decision coming to Virginia Beach. It is now home, and we look forward to a lot of great years here. And we really thank you for accepting us into your community and allowing me the opportunity to lead your police department. And Brad and I are here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you very much, Chief. That was awesome. I actually have a question. What is your vision for Virginia Beach? So you've been here 6 months. What's your vision, and maybe how has that changed since being here?
When you come in an organization, you have your 90 or 100-day plan. You're doing your assessment. What I've found in the vision, I've really identified 4 priority goals for this organization for 2021. First and foremost is technology. We are, probably much like yourself, it's hard to keep up with technology, but we're probably 10 to 15 years behind in a lot of regards. The fact that we're still doing paper-based offense reporting, that the officers handwrite reports, and then it has to go to a supervisor and then a data entry operator to actually enter it in. I believe in being evidence-based and data-driven, but I always say it's hard to be actionable with your data if it's not timely. It has to be timely. So probably the number one is to get us in the 21st century of technology with a new records management system. Technology is a force multiplier. The second issue that we've identified as a priority for us is staffing, retention, recruiting. There's a lot of things that I would like to do in the community. It goes back to that vision. I want to expand our community engagement efforts. I really want to stand up a dedicated youth services unit to wrap our arms and partner with our youth during the summer. We need a dedicated violence reduction strategy, but we're 100 officers short right now. So we're supposed to have 800. We're down to about 700. And the longer that I'm here for a city the size of Virginia Beach, I really think we need closer to 900 because there's more to policing than just responding to calls for service and responding to crashes. We need to really be able to embrace the community. A lot of those things are qualitative, but we have to have personnel to do it. We've got some administrative processes inside that we need to evolve and just take a hard look at why we do things and how we do them, and take a look at it from a best practices perspective from across the country. So, those are really where I'm going is technology. We have to stabilize recruiting and retention. And then once we can do that, we move forward with some of these initiatives to really engage the community. Community liaison squads in all of the precincts. When we got here, we had 6 community engagement officers centralized for an entire city. So we've decentralized and put them under the commands of the captains so that they're responsive to the community and that individual precinct commander, and they're not trying to serve an entire city. But we need to expand that. 1 officer for each of our 4 precincts, nowhere near enough for the community engagement that we need to do as an organization. I really believe we need to have a sergeant and 5 or 6 officers per precinct. And that number needs to be, 5 or 6. It needs to be closer to 30 to be that direct conduit for community engagement efforts. Because theoretically, and community policing is kind of one of those nebulous terms. Nobody can really put their finger on what that means. We would love for every officer to truly be that community-oriented policing officer, but we know that they get busy. Many times they're running from call to call. They don't have time to get out of the car, walk a beat, engage the community. So we really need those designated conduits to work with the community for those quality of life concerns, the chronic nuisance concerns, and where we're at right now, it's truly not sufficient. So there's a lot of things that we want to do, but first we have to overcome the hurdle of our hiring and retention. So I'm going to make a sales pitch again. I know that this is a STEM high school, folks much smarter than me, but if for some reason your heart tells you that you want to engage in public service, please come to the police department and not the fire department. So
we do. I mean, the police department also has forensics, so there's lots of STEM there also. All right, we have another question. What are some similarities and differences that you've seen between Cincinnati Police Department and Virginia Beach?
Policing is very much the same. There's culture and nuances here that I have to be respective to, but it's still very much of a paramilitary structure with the same goals. Cincinnati, 300,000 residents, much smaller, 77 square miles, very compact. And I think we lose sight of this. Cincinnati has 3 times the amount of violent crime that we have here in Virginia Beach. So I know I see the social media, and I see the posts, and I see the news coverage. Violent crime, 1 offense is too much. but we do have to provide context to it that, 3 times the amount of violent crime offenses, which are homicides, rapes, robberies, shootings, in a city of 300,000 versus what we do have in the beach. So we do have some challenges, and we're restructuring to address some of that, but we still need to put it in perspective that when you look at your major cities in North America, we're at the very bottom when it comes to violent crime per 100,000. We plan to keep it that way. What we really need from everyone here is to be our ambassadors, because I think sometimes folks forget how safe we really are, and just to cheerlead and make sure that factual information gets out to the community, and to make sure the community is aware. We've started placing our crime statistics online. So you can go to VB.gov and go to our website. It's our weekly analysis for Virginia Beach's enforcement engagement and strategies. It will have all of our Part 1 crime data, and you can tell how well we're doing as a police department and as a community. And even though we've had some recent shooting violence, we know happened down at the ocean front, we were actually showing a reduction in overall Part 1 violent crime compared to this time last year. So we are going in the right direction, even though we had that recent uptick at the ocean front.
I think it's awesome to just start with a little bit of transparency where you can, and having that update is great. And I think once we, get a little more staffing, your ideas of having more officers out in the community for those community liaison meetings is great. We have another question. If you could go back and tell your 16-year-old self something, what would you tell him?
It would have got better grades in high school. I was not a good high school student. So I think I barely survived with a B- by the skin of my teeth. And so I look at that transcript I've overcome that, and I think it speaks to that you can overcome. But I'm not proud of where I was academically and some of the boneheaded things that I did in high school. So it served me well to see that we have a dedicated group of students that are really championing forward. And I wish that I had taken better stock of where I was, but things seem to have worked out well for me. And I think it goes back to perseverance. But if I could do it all again, when I go back to 16, I would have put much more effort into my scholastic studies than what I did.
All right. Another question is, can you share with our students how our school's SRO can be a resource for them? And we have Officer Lipsy here with us.
Absolutely. Here's a big difference from, a difference in a different way. In Cincinnati, they love their SROs as well. And I have found that they love their SROs here. But there is some community outcry in Cincinnati to pull all the school resource officers out of the schools. That, there's an appearance that the cops can be harmful to the student population. That is absolutely the opposite in Virginia Beach. I think the community, our academic partners, realize the value that the officers bring. And it goes back to establishing the relationships. That the relationships right now are being built with the students, that we envision that parlays once they graduate, and that when we encounter our community on the streets, and maybe it's not under the most ideal circumstances, but there's already that relationship there. So one of the things that we're very proud that made it through, that prior to my arrival, but this department worked very hard to put together a pilot cadet program. So for those that are interested, that once you would graduate from high school, we will employ you in a part-time capacity in the police department, expose you to a number of different assignments, and then really keep our arms wrapped around you until you turn 21, and we can get you into the police academy. So that is up for funding for City Council. We're very hopeful that they are going to fund that. And as we move forward, that would be 32 part-time positions of students once they graduate and then we can continue to provide some structure, guidance, mentorship during those formative years once they graduate until we can matriculate them into the police department.
That's great. Mr. Syak asked if we could work on getting Officer Lipsy a raise. We truly do love him here, and our students love him as well. So he's doing a great job. So a quick plug for Officer Lipsy.
Does a great job. We're happy to have him there.
Yes, he did a great job with Get to Know Your SRO. So if students haven't seen that yet and you want to get to know Officer Lipsy a little better, he does a great job with that too.
I saw on Instagram with the flashy gym shoes.
Of the what? I'm sorry.
The flashy gym shoes. They were wearing matching gym shoes.
Oh, I'm not sure who he was wearing matching gym shoes with. I missed that. But he's always got something flashy going on. Does anybody else have any other questions before we sign out? All right. If not, thank you both, Officer Wessler and Chief I'm going to mess up your name and I apologize. Neudigate. Thank you both so much for your time. I know you all are just as busy, probably much busier than we are here at school, but thank you guys so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And also be on the lookout for some thank you Lansdowne swag soon.
Oh, can't wait. So
yes,
it's our pleasure. We would love to come back, especially in person when circumstances change. So thank you for the time today.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
He was good. I enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Nice.
Thanks,
Very nice.
Dave. Thanks, Dave. Mr. Syak, I mean.